It started with a champagne flute halfway to my lips and ended with a question that shattered everything I thought I knew about my career and my family. My name is Natalie Whitaker. I'm 30 years old, born and raised in Lansing, Michigan, now living in Chicago. I've worked the last 9 years at Sable and Bray Financial, climbing the ladder slowly but surely, or so I thought. The gala was for Mr. Henry Sutton's retirement, a high-profile event held in one of those gleaming, overpriced downtown hotels where the carpet feels like velvet and the air smells like lemon and money. He was my mentor, my champion, my reminder that not all corporate men are just tailored suits and ego. I was seated at a round table near the stage, flanked by company execs, middle managers, and their spouses. Everyone was dressed like magazine ads. The chatter was low and pleasant, the kind of polite laughter that doesn't mean much. I was just sipping from my glass, half listening to a VP drone on about golf, when Grandma Eleanor stood up. She wasn't on the program, but no one stopped her. Who would? Everyone adored her, even the ones who only knew her as the Suttons' old neighbor or that spry woman who brings pies to board meetings. "Henry," she called out loudly, holding her wine glass in the air. "You've been a blessing to this company and to my granddaughter, to Natalie, who wouldn't be where she is today without you." Heads turned toward me. I smiled awkwardly. I wasn't used to attention in this crowd. "And now that she's got that shiny new position at headquarters?" She paused for dramatic effect, then grinned proudly. "Well, I can die happy knowing I helped pull a few strings." The room froze for half a second before erupting in applause. People clapped. Someone nearby even whistled. All eyes turned to me, the rising star. I should have been beaming, but I wasn't. Because I had no idea what she was talking about. I hadn't been offered any position at headquarters. I was still stuck in the same role I'd had for the past 3 years. Junior analyst, East Division. I laughed weakly, trying to hide the pit growing in my stomach. When I looked across the room, I caught my parents' eyes. My mom's wine glass trembled slightly in her hand. My dad, always composed, went pale and looked away, suddenly fascinated with his salad fork. That's when I knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was something deeper, something rotten. Eleanor beamed at me, waiting for a speech, waiting for me to confirm her proud moment. I stood slowly, my legs stiff. "Thank you, Grandma," I said, my voice tight. That means a lot. But I think there's been some confusion. I haven't accepted any new position." Dead silence. A few confused murmurs. A sharp inhale from the HR director 2 tables down. Eleanor blinked. "But your mother told me it was all finalized. Weeks ago. I even called Henry to push it through." She looked at my mom, eyes narrowing. "Denise?" My mother froze, then gave the fakest smile I'd ever seen. "We were going to tell you, eventually." Grandma Eleanor's expression turned cold. "Eventually? You lied to me? You lied to her?" I couldn't breathe. That toast didn't just embarrass me. It exposed something I hadn't dared to imagine before, that my family had hidden a life-changing opportunity from me. And I might never have known if Eleanor hadn't stood up in that damn velvet-carpeted ballroom. Something was broken, and it wasn't just a promotion. It was trust. I still remember the exact words. I was standing in the kitchen with a duffel bag slung over my shoulder, holding the envelope from the community college I'd just been accepted to. I thought maybe we were going to have a nice dinner or something to celebrate. I'd even offered to cook. But instead, my mom poured herself a glass of boxed wine and said, "Well, Natalie, you're 18 now, legally an adult. Time to figure things out on your own." That was it. No congratulations. No mention of my acceptance. Just that, like she'd been waiting for the moment she could wash her hands of me. My dad didn't even look up from his laptop. "We'll always be here emotionally," he said flatly, as if that counted for something. "But financially, you're going to have to be independent now. That's just how the world works." Meanwhile, my little sister Talia was sprawled on the couch in a cashmere hoodie, her new iPad glowing in her lap. She didn't even pretend to listen. She was 13 and already getting flown out to immersive art camps in Vermont and creative residencies in Portugal, all funded by my parents' so-called tight budget. That night, I moved into a shared basement apartment near the bus line. It had exposed pipes, a sticky bathroom floor, and neighbors who played drum and bass at all hours, but it was mine. And I learned real quick that nobody was coming to save me. By day, I worked as a receptionist at an orthodontist's office, answering phones, handling patients, managing scheduling when someone canceled at the last second. At night, I took classes at Lakeside Community College, 3 hours of econ or statistics with professors who never learned my name. Then back home to microwave noodles, review study guides, and pass out in bed before sunrise. I wanted to be angry, and sometimes I was. But mostly, I was tired. Tired of thinking about why I didn't deserve what Talia got. Tired of asking myself if I'd done something wrong. Eventually, I just stopped asking. I didn't go home much. When I did, it was like I'd stepped into someone else's life. One where my sister was the center of everything. Talia had a personal laptop before I ever owned a decent pair of shoes. My mom gave her rides to private art tutors in the city. My dad bragged about her watercolor collection like she was Picasso in training. Once, I overheard my mom on the phone telling someone, "We didn't want Natalie to become too reliant. It's character building, you know? Yeah, character building. That's what they called cutting your kid off and handing the rest of the world to their golden child on a silver platter." Still, I kept showing up. To class, to work, to life. I told myself I didn't need what Talia had. I didn't need connections or internships or shiny gifts for every little milestone. I just needed a chance, a real one. And when I got it, when I made something of myself without them, I swore I'd never forget how it started, with the door closed behind me and nobody looking back. My 20s felt like one long stretch of barely getting by. I lived in a second-floor walk-up with a busted heater and roaches that acted like they paid rent. The kitchen window was stuck half open year-round, and if I turned on the microwave while the coffee pot was brewing, the power went out. My roommate, Alicia, was rarely home. She worked nights at the hospital and slept during the day, which meant I had the place mostly to myself and the bugs. The commute to my job was 90 minutes one way, 3 buses, and a 10-minute walk through whatever weather Chicago decided to throw at me. I worked as a cashier and admin assistant at a shipping warehouse downtown. I filed invoices, answered phones, ran errands, and tried to stay invisible when the floor supervisor was in a mood. It paid just enough for rent, groceries, and 1 bus pass per month, if I stretched things tight. And I was always stretching. There were nights when I skipped dinner so I could print out my homework at the 24-hour copy place. I studied in the break room between shifts, in the back of the bus, and sometimes under the flickering light in the laundry room, when I didn't want to keep Alicia up. Every dollar counted. Every hour mattered. Every mistake felt like a step backward. And then, every so often, I'd get a text from Grandma Eleanor. Just a little something. Focus on your future. Sometimes it was $20. Sometimes it was a couple hundred. And once, on a day I'll never forget, it was enough to cover my first professional certification course. She never made a big deal out of it. Never asked me to call or thank her. But every message came with a few words of belief I didn't even know I needed. "You've got this, sweetheart. They'll regret overlooking you. Make them eat their words." I never told her how bad things really were. I don't think I could have, even if I wanted to. There's a kind of quiet shame that comes with eating cereal for dinner 4 nights in a row, while your sister is posting pictures of herself at a ceramics retreat in the French countryside. Talia was thriving, of course. New internships, new mentors, new gadgets every season. My parents called her visionary and precocious. They called me practical, like it was a polite way to say forgotten. Still, I didn't hate her. I couldn't afford to. Hating her would have taken energy I needed to survive. Instead, I poured everything I had into work. I volunteered for extra shifts. I applied for scholarships and scraped together entry fees for finance workshops. I used Eleanor's transfers to buy slacks and blouses from clearance racks that didn't look cheap if I wore them with confidence. Without her, those quiet, perfectly timed deposits, I might have given up. I might have believed I wasn't meant to succeed. But she saw something in me. She always had. And somehow, that belief carried me through the years no one else even noticed I was trying. By the time I turned 30, I'd learned to stop expecting much from anyone with my last name. I was still at Sable and Bray, still technically junior anything, despite almost a decade of showing up early, staying late, mentoring interns, and training 3 different managers who eventually leapfrogged over me into promotions. I told myself I was building towards something, a private consultancy, my own firm one day, but it felt like I'd been stuck in the building part forever. My 1-bedroom apartment in Logan Square was clean, quiet, and fully paid for with my own money. I had an espresso machine I was irrationally proud of and a vision board in the closet that I updated twice a year. Most nights, I fell asleep with spreadsheets open on my laptop and a highlighter mark on my hand. The only consistent voices from my family were either generic or distant. My dad, Marcus, called once a month, usually during his drive home from tennis or golf. "Have you considered getting a mentor?" he'd ask, as if Henry hadn't mentored me for years. "Sometimes you just have to push harder, Natalie. Be more assertive." My mom didn't call. She forwarded me newsletters. Actual, full newsletters, with subject lines like 5 ways women undermine their own power or stop waiting for permission to succeed. No message, no context. Just the quiet implication that whatever wasn't happening in my life, it was probably my fault. Talia, of course, was thriving, or pretending to be, which was basically the same thing online. Every week it was a new gallery opening, or a creative co-working retreat in Bali, or a luxury hotel collab with some wellness brand that didn't exist 3 months ago. Her Instagram looked like a travel ad for a life I'd never had access to. I didn't follow her, but I saw it. People always sent me things. Vanessa, co-workers, even old high school friends. "Wow, your sister's living the dream, huh?" they'd say. I usually just smiled and went back to work. That year, Grandma Eleanor couldn't make it to my birthday. She'd had a recent fall, and her doctors didn't want her traveling far. I understood. We talked every week on the phone anyway. She promised she'd send something special and that it was coming through my parents. The party wasn't really a party, just cake, wine, and a few friends from the office. I invited my parents and Talia out of politeness. They came, late and distracted, and stayed just long enough to eat a slice and say they had an early morning. Before they left, my mom handed me a slim gift bag with gold ribbon. "Grandma wanted you to have this," she said, with a small smile. "It's from her collection." Inside was a vintage pen in a glass case. Elegant, heavy, the kind of thing you might pass down through generations if your family was the sentimental type. "It's lovely," I said, even though I had no use for it. I hadn't written by hand in years. I set it gently on the coffee table and thanked them. They were gone within 30 minutes. After I cleaned up, I sat alone on my couch, barefoot, sipping leftover wine and staring at the pen. It didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a placeholder, like I was still waiting for the real thing to arrive. It was a Thursday. I remember because I was staring down a spreadsheet that refused to cooperate when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in a while. Vanessa, my cousin. We weren't particularly close, but we talked here and there, weddings, holidays, the occasional forwarded meme. So a random call in the middle of a workday? That was new. "Hey," I answered, already bracing for some weird family update. "Everything okay?" Vanessa hesitated for a second, then said, "Did you hear about Talia's new studio?" My heart thumped once, not out of jealousy, but confusion. "No, I didn't even know she was looking for one," I said. "Wait, what kind of studio?" "Art," she said. "Huge space. Downtown. She had a housewarming party last weekend. Said your parents covered the lease. Full year, paid up front." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Vanessa lowered her voice like she was sharing state secrets. "That's why I'm calling. I didn't know you didn't know. I figured you'd been told. And then at the party, your mom said something that didn't sit right." My chest tightened. "She said you were always so distant, that you and Talia had different temperaments, and that you had a hard time celebrating other people's success. It felt pointed." My mouth was dry. "So she made it sound like I'm bitter." "Yeah," Vanessa said softly, "like you were jealous, or holding a grudge." I stared out the window, heart thudding. I hadn't even known Talia had a studio. And now I was the villain in some made-up story about sibling rivalry. "Thanks for telling me," I said. "Really." I hung up and sat with it for a few minutes, rage bubbling just beneath the surface. Then I did something I normally avoided. I called Talia. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice airy and smug. "Hey, this is rare." "I just talked to Vanessa," I said. "She told me about your new space." "Oh yeah," she said casually. "Isn't it great? It's finally happening." She also told me Mom and Dad paid the lease. That true? Talia paused. I mean, yeah. I felt my hands tighten into fists. And no one thought I deserved to know that? She laughed, like I was being ridiculous. You hate the spotlight. You've said that 1,000,000 times. What's the big deal? The big deal, I snapped, is that they told me they couldn't afford to help me, ever. Not with college, not with housing, not with my certifications. But they can throw thousands at you for a loft with skylights. She sighed. Natalie, they gave it to me. It's not your concern. I went silent. For the first time, I heard the edge in her voice. Not insecurity, not defensiveness. Entitlement. She truly believed she was owed more than I was. And my parents? They'd made sure she got it, while painting me as the angry one. That call didn't just make me mad. It made me ready. I was scrolling LinkedIn during a slow lunch break when I saw the post. A black and gold banner with blocky serif font, celebrating 35 years of brilliance, the Denise and Marcus Whitaker Gala. Attached were photos from last year's party. My parents smiling beside some local business mogul. Talia in a floor-length silver dress, flanked by champagne flutes and people I hadn't seen since childhood. Beneath it, the caption, "Save the date. Private guest list only." I stared at it for a long time, convinced I'd missed something. I checked my texts, my email, even my old Gmail from college. Nothing. No invite, not even a heads up. Then my phone buzzed with a new message from Grandma Eleanor. Eleanor, so glad I'll finally get to hug you at the gala. Can't wait to see your face. And my stomach dropped. So she thought I'd be there, which meant my parents told her I would be, which meant this wasn't just an oversight. I called my mom, Denise, and she answered with that rehearsed cheeriness I'd grown to resent. Hi, sweetheart, everything okay? I saw the gala post, I said. Eleanor thinks I'm coming. I haven't received anything. Did it get lost? A pause. Just half a second too long. We had to trim the list, she said flatly. You weren't essential. I blinked. What? We have limited seating, Natalie. It's not personal. But you invited Vanessa, I said. And her fiancé. You invited people from high school we don't even talk to. That's different. How is it different? They're part of the professional circle, she said, voice tightening. This isn't a family barbecue. It's a strategic event. Strategic. Like I was a misstep, a liability. I waited, hoping she'd backtrack, but she didn't. Mom, I said, you told Grandma I was coming. Why? She asked, my mom said. We didn't want her upset. She's been so fragile lately. Right, so you lied. I softened the truth, which is that I'm not even worth a folding chair in the back, she sighed. Don't make this dramatic. You can see photos after. It's not a big deal. It is to her, I snapped. She's expecting to see me. She's looking forward to it. That's not on us, she said. I hung up without saying goodbye. I sat at my desk staring at the monitor, not seeing anything. All I could hear was Eleanor's cheerful voice, imagining me in a fancy dress, hugging her and smiling like we were still part of the same family. I took a breath and made my decision. I was going, not for my parents, not even for Talia, but for Eleanor. She deserved the truth. If they wanted to erase me from the narrative, they should have thought twice before inviting the one woman who never forgot I existed. Because I was done pretending I didn't see what they were doing, and I was done letting them get away with it. I stood in the hotel lobby for a full minute before stepping inside the ballroom. The same shimmering chandeliers, the same sleek marble floors, the same kind of event I'd been kept out of my entire life. Except this time, I wasn't standing on the outside of the glass. I was walking right in through the front doors, uninvited and unapologetic. I wore a navy-tailored suit. Classic, clean, nothing flashy, just sharp enough to make people wonder why they didn't know me. As I stepped past the entrance, heads started to turn. Conversations dipped. A few guests gave me polite, puzzled nods, trying to place me. My parents were by the stage, mid-conversation with some investors. My mother froze when she saw me. My dad's mouth opened slightly like he'd just seen a ghost. Too late. I was already weaving my way through the crowd, heels firm against the tile, eyes locked on Eleanor near the front row. She was seated proudly in a floral silk blouse and pearls, chatting with a board member like she ran the whole company, which, honestly, wasn't far off. When she spotted me, she lit up like a kid at Christmas. "There she is," Eleanor's voice rang out, cutting through the room. "There's my future executive." Half the room turned to stare. I smiled gently and approached her table. Eleanor grabbed my hand with surprising strength and looked up at me, beaming. "How's that head office job I arranged going? You must be swamped already." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. My parents had gone pale. My mother clutched her champagne glass like it was a lifeline. My dad looked down at his shoes. "I didn't get any offer," I said softly, but clearly. The room quieted fast, like someone had flipped a switch. Eleanor blinked. "What?" I turned to face her fully. There was no job, no promotion, no call. Nothing ever came through. The silence was heavy now. You could hear a fork clatter 3 tables over. Eleanor straightened in her chair, confusion morphing into slow, dawning fury. "Marcus," she said, voice sharper now. "Denise? What's she talking about?" my father stammered. "Eleanor, we were going to tell you—" "When?" Eleanor barked. "At her retirement party?" My mother finally spoke, voice tight. "We thought it was best." She seemed content where she was. "Content?" Eleanor snapped. "You mean she was excluded? You mean you took an opportunity meant for her and hid it?" Talia, standing off to the side in some champagne-colored dress that looked like it cost a mortgage payment, stepped forward with a loud huff. "Okay, this is ridiculous. I earned that position." Eleanor's eyes swung toward her like a hawk's. "You what?" Talia's voice went up half a pitch. "I worked hard for that offer. They didn't take anything. They just redirected it. I was more qualified." Lies don't land well in a room full of professionals. No one said it out loud, but the energy shifted. People looked away. Others frowned. A few murmured. Talia's confidence wilted by the second. Eleanor stood up, slowly, carefully, but with purpose. Her cane tapped once on the tile. "Then I want my name removed," she said loudly, "from the company's legacy project. From your website, from everything," Denise gasped. "Mother, don't, no, I will not be associated with this," Eleanor said, voice trembling but fierce. "You stole from her. You lied to me. And you embarrassed yourselves in front of everyone here." No one clapped. No one cheered. But no one stopped her either. My parents just stood there, frozen, humiliated, small. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt seen. The ballroom cleared out faster than I expected. People who'd smiled and toasted minutes before suddenly became very interested in their phones. Conversations faded into awkward silence, replaced by low murmurs and shifting glances. A few couples left early, coats draped over their arms, nodding politely as they slipped past my parents without a word. Denise and Marcus stood stiffly near the stage, completely exposed, eyes darting around like they were waiting for someone, anyone, to swoop in and save them. No one did. Eleanor didn't say another word to them. She simply turned, took my arm, and walked me out of the room. Her hand was warm and steady. In the elevator, she said, "I wish I'd known sooner, sweetheart. I would have raised hell years ago." I laughed. "Just once." "You kind of just did." She gave a short nod, chin held high. "Damn right." When we reached the valet, she leaned against her cane and looked up at me with a kind of pride I hadn't seen since childhood. "You kept your head in there. That took more strength than most people have in a lifetime." I didn't know what to say. My chest still felt tight, my throat raw from holding it all in. But I nodded, and that seemed to be enough. "I'm going to fix this," she said quietly. "I already started." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Eleanor just smiled. "You'll see." The next morning, I got an email from someone at headquarters. The subject line? Eleanor Whitaker Business Development Fund. "Congratulations, Natalie." I opened it and stared for a full minute. A 6-figure grant, business consulting support, a mentor network, office setup stipends, resources I didn't even know existed. I read the letter attached 3 times before it sank in. Eleanor had created the fund 5 years ago, originally intended for a promising young woman in the family. She had assumed, because of what my parents told her, that I didn't need it. But now she knew better, and she had made sure it all came to me. Alongside the grant paperwork was a scanned copy of a handwritten letter in her cursive script. "You were never less than Natalie." They just made you feel that way. I'm sorry I believed them. This is yours. Not because I pity you, but because you've earned it every single day you chose to keep going. Build something beautiful. Love, Eleanor. I sat there in my apartment, barefoot in pajama pants, tears silently rolling down my cheeks. This wasn't a handout. It was restoration. It was someone finally telling me I was worth investing in. Not because I demanded it, but because I'd proven I always was. 6 months later, I turned the key to my own office for the first time. It wasn't in a skyscraper. It wasn't in a tech hub or some flashy co-working space with neon signs and kombucha on tap. It was a quiet second-floor suite in Oak Park, with exposed brick, natural light, and just enough space for a small team and a modest conference table. The walls smelled faintly of paint and new beginnings. It was mine, Whitaker and Kobrick Consulting. My name on the door, my name on the stationery. I dreamed of that moment for over a decade, usually in the late hours between spreadsheets and student loan payments. And now, thanks to Eleanor, it was real. I didn't tell my parents I'd opened it. In fact, I hadn't spoken to them, or Talia, since the night of the gala. No texts, no calls, not even a vague hope you're doing well email from my mom with a self-help link buried inside. And honestly, I felt no urge to change that. There was no dramatic send-off, just silence. And it felt peaceful, like a room finally aired out after years of stale tension. I poured everything into the business. My first client was a local nonprofit that needed help restructuring their funding strategy. Then came a tech startup trying to break into the Midwest market. Word spread. My calendar filled. I hired a part-time assistant, then a project manager. Nothing flashy, just good work, done well, with integrity. Every other weekend, I took the train out to Eleanor's house. We'd sit in her garden, drink tea, and talk about life and business. She told stories about my grandfather I'd never heard. I updated her on client wins. Sometimes we just sat in comfortable silence, like we'd finally landed in the version of our relationship that had always been waiting for us. She started introducing me as my business partner to her friends. I didn't correct her. One rainy Saturday afternoon, I posted my first article to the Whitaker and Cowher blog. I'd been thinking about it for weeks. What I wanted to say now that I had my own voice, my own platform, my own damn name on the header. The title was simple: When Family Becomes Your Biggest Obstacle, and How to Win Anyway. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I wrote about grit, about betrayal, about the quiet resilience it takes to build something when the people who should have backed you only handed you barriers. I wrote for the women who got left behind, who were called bitter when they dared to want more, who were told it's not your concern after being robbed in plain sight. And I ended it with this: sometimes the closure you're looking for isn't an apology or an explanation. It's success. Quiet, earned, unstoppable success. The kind they can't take from you, because they never gave it to you in the first place. I hit publish. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, stood by the window of my new office, and let the rain tap gently against the glass. Starting over had never felt so much like coming home.